Jaggerstep is a unique dash that gives King several follow-ups to choose from. What makes it such a strong dash is that it covers a lot of ground and it begins crushing lows after only 6 frames. For reference, hop kicks don't crush lows until 9 frames. There are so many follow-ups to choose from, but today we're going to focus on 2. The first one being Mexican Magma Drive. It's a chain throw with a startup of 12 frames, it's a high, and its throw break is dependent on King's input. Now this is the greediest chain throw out of the 3 big chain throws that we've covered so far in Art of the Throw, but it's the one with the most reward. So with every throw, King needs a mid to mix it up with. In this case, it'll be Hammer, also known as Jaggerstep 2. It's a 12 frame mid that guarantees a crouch throw on hit. So remember that crouch throws are unbreakable in Tekken 8, meaning that it's a guaranteed follow-up. Now let's look at the properties of these 2 options here. You can see that they both have a similar startup, meaning that you cannot fuzzy duck this mix-up. However, you can react to it. So one of the problems with trying to mix up the Jaggerstep throw with the mid is that the animation before it comes out gives it away. So a high level player can see the Jaggerstep throw and duck it in time. However, King has a special technique he can use to mask the animation of his Jaggerstep follow-ups. If you hold Jaggerstep for just the right amount of time, you can induce a red spark that'll hide the animation before the throw comes out. With this technique, you can turn Jaggerstep mix-ups into an unseeable, unfuzzyable, tracking, mid-high mix-up. And that's just what he needs.
Out of course, the Evo Japan as well had a really good performance too.
No. Oh my goodness, you gotta guess right.
Stop! Stop! Sold on Naciente.
All you have to do is hold 3+4 for just the right amount of time and then cancel it with your follow-up. You can see that doing this technique will delay your follow-up by just a few frames, but that's a small price to pay to make something unseeable. Alright, so let's go into specifics to make sure you can do this in practice mode. First step is to hold Jaggerstep for at least 21 frames. Then, you press your follow-up within 29 frames of the start of Jaggerstep, but no sooner than 25 frames. Here's another way of looking at it. During practice mode, in your command history, make sure you press 3+4 for 21 frames or longer, and then look at the number above it. Make sure the numbers in the pink box add up to 25, 26, 27, 28, or 29. Here are some practice mode examples. You can see that these 2 conditions are met, and so the spark comes out. All it takes is probably a few minutes of practice to get the timing right, but once you do, you can do it pretty consistently. You just have to know what you're looking for. Once you have the technique down, you should have a unfuzzyable, unseeable mix-up between Jaggerstep 2 and Jaggerstep Chainthrow. Alright, let's talk about the next technique here, the reverse back-turn Jaggerstep. Now, when you're back-turned, you can Jaggerstep forward, but you cannot do it backwards. But if you press forward, neutral, then 3+4, you can perform a reverse back-turned Jaggerstep. This technique is super useful because then you can control how you're spacing and how you close the gap in an unexpected way. I don't know what anyone else calls this, but I think I'm just gonna call it a Jaggerstep, and here's why. Many years ago, a King player came into my chat and we played a few sets together, and he showed me the reverse back-turn Jaggerstep, and I was dumbfounded. I mean, that was the first time I ever seen that. His name is Jaggerstep, so I thought, well, that's what it should be named after. Sort of like how Nina's Hayashida Step got its name. It was named after a Japanese Nina player named, you guessed it, Hayashida. Alright, let's get back on track. The great thing about this technique is that you can still do any follow-up you want. However, there's one important thing to consider. You have to do the neutral in between the forward and the Jaggerstep. If you don't, you won't be able to do multiple spins. This is important because if you do the Jaggerstep just right, you can combine it with a Spark Cancel to get a Jaggerstep Spark Cancel. It's a little bit of a complicated input technique, but with this, you can combine both the Jaggerstep and the Spark Cancel to get the best of both worlds. And from then on out, you can really flex your creativity to do some insane setups. Now in the last chapter, we've gone over Arm Breaker and Standing Heel Hold, both chain throws from Crouch Dash. Now we're going to go through chain throws from the Jaguar Step, also known as the Jaguar Step series. Stupidly enough, in Season 2 they changed the input for it, so I'm just going to patch it over right there. And I'm not going to re-render all this because it took about 20 hours, so I'm just going to patch it over. There. Alright, so as some of you may know, the first sequence in this chain throw is the Mexican Magma Drive. You can see that both the 1 and the 2 break options are identical. Just like with Chapter 4, we're going to start with taking a look at the Okizeme options out of Mexican Magma Drive. This is going to be the only sequence in the Jaguar Step series that ends in face down, feet towards, with no frame advantage. But we gotta address the elephant in the room. During Season 1, you were able to execute a lot of Okizeme setups. But with Season 2's changes to stand up backwards and stand up, there aren't as many options anymore. Mainly because the opponent can block way sooner than before while standing. Here's an example. Back in Season 1, after Mexican Magma Drive, you got a guaranteed heat smash whenever the opponent would stand up or stand up backwards. But now, since the opponent blocks way sooner, the most you can get is a heat smash on block, which is still something, but it's a big nerf to King's Okizeme options. And not only that, it is straight up a removal of an entire dimension of this game. It's not just King that suffers from this change as well, it's the entire cast. And you can't even argue that this is a defensive buff, because it really isn't. All this change really does is make you think that standing up is the quote-unquote safest option, when in reality, it incentivizes the opponent to squeeze in more canned mid-low mix-up slop. In King's case, running Jaguar mix-ups. Oh god. I'm probably never gonna make an Art of the Throw chapter on that stupid stance because it's just too streamlined and lifeless. Like, what am I gonna say? Oh yeah, you can either do the safe mid-launcher or the hard-to-punish knockdown low with a guaranteed follow-up. Like, no. I refuse to encourage that riskless, lifeless meta. But the worst part is, you have to do the Jaguar Sprint mix-ups in tournament. You're stupid if you don't. King and others needed nerfs to their Okizeme, that much is true. But a good way of doing that would have been to increase the reward for guessing correctly. For example, buffing get-up kicks so that they offer more reward to the defensive player, while adding more risk to the offensive player. Instead, the entire mechanic was streamlined into oblivion to the point to where this game is played almost entirely standing up, and that's a travesty. But thankfully, there are still some Okizeme setups that they forgot to patch out. We'll go over them soon. Ooh, sorry about that rant. Anyways, here are the properties on break. You are -3 and you can still buffer attack inputs on break. If you're wondering what that means, watch the first couple minutes of Chapter 4. But here's something interesting. There is a guaranteed side switch on hit and on break. Alright, so what does that mean? Let's give an example. Dragunov's Purge Slam. This is his generic 2+4 throw. On hit, it switches sides. But on break, it also switches sides. Meaning that if the opponent doesn't duck the throw, Dragunov gets a guaranteed side switch. This is super useful for wall positioning. If your back is up against the wall, you could just throw out a Mexican Magma Drive and no matter what, the opponent will be side switched with you. So we've just spent almost 10 minutes talking about one move. That's just how auto the throw is. Get used to it. Now we're going to move on to Cobra Twist, which is a guaranteed follow-up after landing Mexican Magma Drive. This is one of the more unique Okizeme situations you get put in, with face up left shoulder at +1. At first, it seems like mostly the same story as Mexican Magma Drive. Big nerf across the board to stand up and stand backwards, but there's a few interesting properties we can talk about. First and foremost, Heat Smash is a guaranteed attempt, where even side rolls lose to it. But again, the opponent can still block. Here's another interesting tidbit. Ollie Kick is guaranteed, but only if you do the double input. So if you do a single Ollie Kick, it'll lose to side roll right. But if you do double Ollie Kick, it'll catch it. Yeah, it's sort of a bug, and I'm not going to get into it too much. I don't know, maybe they'll patch it out. There's a caveat to this. If the opponent tech rolls after you do a double Ollie Kick, they'll punish you for it. So only use double Ollie Kick for round enders when you know it'll kill them. Okay, back to the chart. So for ground throws, you have to do a micro sidestep right before inputting it, just to make sure that you catch the side rolls. If you remember from chapter 4, this also has the added benefit of beating wake up low kicks. And if you haven't seen chapter 4 yet, I would check it out. There's a lot of prerequisite information and terms that I just don't have time to go over again. This video is already long enough as it is. Now, remember when I said that there are still some setups that beat stand up backwards? This is one of them. If you sidewalk left at just the right time, you get to catch them on their side and go for a forward 2 down 1 2. The cool thing about this little setup is that it doesn't require that much commitment, as if they just stand up, you can kind of react to that and not complete the string. And even if you do go for the forward 2 down 1, you do get a little bit of a punish mix up there. But if they go for the wake up mid kick, you get their full right side again. And so the whole combo is guaranteed. So even with the season 2 changes to scaling and health, this combo does a whole lot of damage. Okay, so that's Cobra Twist, and we're going to move on to Reverse DDT, where once again we get a mix-up between a 1 break and a 2 break, both of which are identical. This sequence ends in face down, feet away, at +0. So you're not going to get as much of an Okizeme setup compared to the other sequences we saw. But we're going to go over them anyways because we made it this far. Because Jin is already facing you, you're not going to really get any back turn setups with this Okizeme. You're just going to get mostly grounded hits, catching your opponent standing up or trying to roll or whatever. So like before, you can enforce a cheap Heat Smash mix-up, but it'll lose to side roll left and right. And so the only interesting thing you get is a lasso kick if they try to stand up, or a generic down 4. And so here's one more thing. If the opponent does nothing, then the generic down 4 will whiff. But that's character dependent. Because if you're a big character like Jack, then generic down 4 is guaranteed. Okay, so on break properties, you're a -6 now, which is a bit more than last time, but you can still buffer attack inputs on break. And that's really interesting because remember, on the crouch dash chain throws, you couldn't really do that. Okay, so that's Reverse DDT. Really short and sweet. Okay, now we're going into the first 3-way mix-up of the series. We're gonna start with Samurai Rock. This is the sequence I land the most because no one really ever breaks 1+2. So after you jam their foot where their shoulder is, you're going to be left in this position, face down, left shoulder with 0 frame advantage. Alright, we're going to make this quick because this is the exact same Okizeme situation as reverse DDT with one major difference. Can you spot it? That's right, generic down 4 is fully guaranteed, even if the opponent has a normal sized hitbox. I haven't really tested it with Sha Yu, but you guys can, right? I can't just spoon feed you everything, I have a job, you know. And so just like with reverse DDT, lasso kick beats stand up and stand backwards. And so the on-break properties are still similar, -6, and you can still buffer attack inputs on break. Okay, so that's Samurai Rock, my second favorite 1+2 break Chainthrow sequence. The more knowledgeable kick players out there can take a wild guess what's my first favorite. But for now, we're going to move on to reverse special stretch bomb. Alright, so this Chainthrow sequence ends in face up, feet away, at +1. Okay, so technically, even if double ollie kick is recommended, I wouldn't recommend going for Okizeme setups on this sequence right here. Instead, I would just continue to Chainthrow into backdrop, which is a guaranteed follow-up from reverse special stretch bomb. So there are no offensive Okizeme setups, at least the ones that I find useful. However, we can start talking about defensive Okizeme setups. After any Chainthrow, if you suspect the opponent is going to go for any get-up kick, try this. Sidestep left into forward crouch, down forward 2. And so what happens is that if the opponent goes for a low, they'll get low parried. But if they go for the mid, the sidestep left will dodge the mid kick and you can punish with a forward crouch, down forward 2. And so you could probably call that an option select, but anyways, remember that you can do this technique with any Chainthrow, or any throw at all really. So then that's reverse special stretch bomb. We're gonna move into backdrop where we find absolutely nothing because I don't really want to spend time with that. And so we're gonna move on to the next three-way mix-up where we got the one and only yours truly. So it's kind of interesting. It's sort of like Samurai Rock where they end up face down, but this time you're on the right shoulder and still with no frame advantage. And it's still sort of like Samurai Rock where you get similar Okizeme setups with lasso kick and all that other stuff, but generic down 4 is not guaranteed here on normal sized hitboxes. It's only going to work on characters like Jack. So, oh well, it's not meant to be. Okay, similar as before, but you're -3 this time, so you have a bit more frame advantage. Oh, look at this combo. Yeah, shoulder tackle is guaranteed after a Atlas Hammer. Okay, that's Sol Naciente. So then let's move on to the other 2/3 that make up this three-way mix-up. Burning Hammer. At this point, you could really see the total damage start to add up. And if you look over at your opponent, this is the point where you can see them start to break a sweat. Same as Sol Naciente, same as Samurai Rock, you are left face down with no frame advantage. And so you guessed it, same exact Oki situation. In this one, generic down floor is not guaranteed on all hitboxes either, but that's just the way it is. So similar to Sol Naciente, you are left at -3 on break, meaning that you have a bit more options than usual. Okay, but that's Burning Hammer, nothing too special there. But now we're gonna get into some interesting properties here. Screwdriver is weird, to say the least. Either way, if you made it this far in a Chainthrow during a tournament set, I'll tip my hat off to you. Good shit. So after 21 seconds of chain throwing, you are left with face up, feet away. But you're -10. So because you're -10, this is where you need to use defensive Okizeme, where if you remember, I recommended sidestep left, forward crouch, down forward 2. So again, you see that it is not recommended to use offensive Okizeme setups in this situation. Instead, you gotta use something like a sidestep left, low parry, sidestep left, back Jaguar step, some kind of disengage to punish a get-up kick attempt. So I gotta say something, because you are so minus in this situation, it is really hard to pull off a consistent option select out of this. But it's sort of your only option here. What's more is that you are -6 on break, meaning that you have more limited options than usual. You can still move and stuff, so... Alright, we made it past Screwdriver, and that is the last sequence of the Jaggerstep series. So then what's left to talk about? Well, there's one thing left, and that's putting it all together. So think of this Chainthrow like a board game, where the golden king mask is you, and the opponent is the silver king mask. Your goal is to make it as far as possible in this flowchart. So long as you guys don't meet in the same spot, the Chainthrow will continue. And so you and your opponent have to guess each other's path. You as the king player have to make sure that you do not land in the same spot as the opponent, while the opponent has to make sure that they land in the same spot as you. If you guys both land in the same spot, then the opponent breaks the throw. It's a pretty fun way to visualize this Chainthrow, but it also has its practical uses. While messing around with this, you come to notice that there are 2 types of break methods. Technically 3, but we can go over that later. There are those that switch around and try to cover as much ground as possible, and then there are those who commit. They choose one break and stick with it till the very end. Committers are very stubborn players, but they are a king player's favorite type. Either way, your goal is to match your opponent's method. That way, you guys never meet on the same throw break. So here's an example. You go for a 1 break while the opponent goes for 2. The opponent, realizing that they guessed wrong, goes for the 1, but then you switch over to the 2 break. And so you guys end up basically switching spots, but never meeting in the same throw break. And In this example, you guys are both committers, so you start with the 1 break and you stick with it till the very end while your opponent sticks with the 2 break. You guys never change, and so neither of you guys ever meet in the same throw break. So remember that it's still possible for your opponent to change strategies to, say, go from committing to switching. But this is where the real beauty of the Jaggerstep series comes in. Remember those 1+2 breaks? You can kind of think of them as emergency exits. And so, when you go for your Chainthrow, you can just exit while your opponent still tries to play the mind games. And so in that way, you kind of almost don't have to worry about your opponent switching strategies. You just do your thing, and when you feel like you want to take the money and run, you do it. There's so much I could talk about with the strategies of the Jaggerstep Chainthrow, so maybe I'll reserve that for another video. So there it is. After months of research, hundreds of scenarios tested, and a whole lot of rendering, we have gone through basically everything you need to know about each and every one of these sequences, as well as the strategy that goes into each of these Chainthrows. I know it took forever to make these videos, and I want to thank you for your patience and your support. I'll be making more Art of the Throw videos in the future. Maybe not as ambitious as this one, but definitely just as useful. And now that I've finished this big project, I'll have more time to be streaming. So catch me on Twitch at Sol_Naciente. At this point, I'd also like to branch out and try other video series. I have some ideas that I'd like to try. Maybe some vlogs too, here and there. Who knows? Whatever it is, I like to take my time with it and make sure that it's the best possible quality for all of you. So with that, let me get back to work. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.